the energy sector is being transformed, and that's why many of us are here today. We're moving from a fossil fuel economy to a clean economy. And about 15% of the electricity that is currently produced in the US actually comes from renewable energy. But given the stakes, we need to keep accelerating this transformation. And while innovation is happening throughout the energy sector, most of the new technologies that are supporting this transformation are actually driven by startups. Unfortunately, women tend to be underrepresented in startups, especially in clean tech startups. So we're leaving about half of our talent pool behind. There are many systemic and cultural issues that make it difficult for women to join startups. But as a wise man once said, we all need to be the change we want to see in the world. So today, Percy and I are going to give you an example of the type of innovative products that startups like AutoGrid are delivering. And we will also share our personal journeys in the startup world. And we hope that it inspires you to think of the skills that you could be contributing to an energy startup. But first, so what is the energy transformation about? It is a transformation that is driven by deregulation and an increase in renewable energy generation. We're moving essentially from a centralized grid that is powered by fossil fuel generation plants to a distributed and decarbonized grid powered by flexible resources like solar, wind, energy storage, and devices like smart plugs and smart thermostats. And while these flexible resources can produce energy at prices that are sometimes lower than traditional generation, they're harder for utilities to control. And there are several reasons for that. First, these resources are intermittent. The sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. Second, these new flexible resources are not always owned by utilities. Many of them are owned by their customers. And these new flexible devices are sitting behind the meter on customers' premises. And the third reason is that these new devices are distributed. They're spread out through the distribution network, and there are a lot more of them than there used to be central power plants. So overall, this modern grid, which is deregulated, decarbonized, and distributed, is a lot more complex and a lot more opaque for utilities to manage. But utilities still need to balance supply and demand in real time. They still need to deliver electricity whenever and wherever it is needed without charging a fortune for it. And now with this modern grid, utilities, in order to balance supply and demand, have to leverage the data that is being generated by thousands of devices connected across the grid in order to gain visibility and control over new flexible resources. And that's actually exactly what AutoGrid's flexibility management software does. It analyzes petabytes of data to let utilities predict, optimize, and control new distributed energy resources in real time. So as the line between electricity generators and electricity consumers is blurring, AutoGrid's platform allows utilities to keep balancing supply and demand in real time, to integrate more renewable energy onto their grids, to lower the operational cost, and more importantly, to deepen the relationships that they have with the customers that now own flexible resources. And Percy is going to explain to us how our platform actually works.
Thanks, Elise. So like Elise said, a key technical challenge of integrating a lot of renewable energy onto the grid is that supply and demand have to meet in real time, but we can't turn renewable energy up and down as easily as we can with traditional fossil fuel generation. So historically, utilities have taken demand as externally determined, looking something like this over the course of the day with a peak in the late afternoon. And then they've turned fossil fuel generators up and down to meet demand. But when there's lots of wind and solar supply on the grid, the supply curve might look more like this, with a peak in the middle of the day with solar and then some often windy nights. And so on a simple sort of first cut, you might have grid operators curtail the renewable energy during the periods when supply exceeds demand, and then turn up fossil fuel generators when demand exceeds supply. But we can do better than that. because we have all of these flexible energy resources on the grid, things like HVAC and smart thermostats at commercial and residential locations, energy storage systems with and without solar, electric vehicles, and industrial loads that have some amount of flexibility. So AutoGrid software enables utilities and aggregators to use these distributed flexible energy resources to adjust both the supply and the demand to meet each other in real time. The AutoGrid Flex software, at a high level, what we do is we measure these mini devices in real time, and we ingest that data to inform our forecasts of both what load will do and what renewable generation will do. We use those forecasts to make optimal plans for how to control these controllable devices, and then we dispatch those plans through our software to the devices. And then to close the loop, we continue to measure and continue to use those measurements to adjust our forecasts and our optimizations in real time. And so in this example, here are some ways that the Flex software might bring supply and demand into balance. So it could choose to charge energy storage systems during the solar and wind peaks and discharge them during the demand peaks, times when demand exceeds supply. It might charge electric vehicles during the windy peak in the nighttime. It can control smart HVAC and thermostat systems to pre-cool during the solar peak in the middle of the day and then thus reduce cooling load in the mid to late afternoon. And it can control industrial loads that have some flexibility to reduce demand during peak and perhaps even increase demand during nighttime supply peaks. So at a high level, this is how our software enables utilities and aggregators to monitor and control this diverse array of flexible energy resources and maximize their value while making supply and demand balance in real time. And I work mostly on the optimize and control boxes here in my role as a hybrid software engineer and data scientist at AutoGrid. And my path to this role was atypical, and I want to share with you guys that the path to technical jobs at Cleantech startups does not have to be linear. So as you heard in my introduction, I actually studied anthropology in undergrad. And this was both because I wanted to understand people in society, and I was genuinely interested in it. But also, even though I always liked science and math, I didn't really understand what it would mean to be an engineer or a programmer, and it didn't sound like something I would like. But then after college, I realized I wanted to do things that were concretely addressing problems that mattered to me. And so I went to some night classes, and then I got a master's in environmental engineering. And it was during that master's program that I first tried programming, and I discovered that I really loved it. And I continued my graduate work and my PhD in climate science, and it was awesome. I got a much deeper understanding of the climate system, but I still wanted to do something applied to this urgent problem of mitigating climate change. And so I, during the course of my PhD, was trying to talk to different organizations and companies, and I was lucky enough to do an internship at AutoGrid, which was a great way to get my foot in the door because I didn't have a lot of the typical credentials of a software engineer or data scientist. And today I love my work, and I really love programming, and I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to try it despite my preconceived notions. And so I encourage all of you, if you're interested at all, to, if you don't already program, to try it out. And I just want you to know that it's possible to learn it and become a programmer in different ways than the traditional undergrad software engineering degree. And more broadly, regardless of your background, in Cleantech startups, we need more women with both technical and other specialties. And you will really help make these companies stronger. And please apply. No.
Thanks, Percy. So as opposed to Percy, I do not have a technical background. I went to business school in France because I wanted to start my own book publishing company. But instead, I moved to the US, and I worked in technology marketing until 2010, which is when I transitioned from the software industry to the solar industry. Mainly because I wanted to work on solutions that mattered to me, and more importantly, to the future of my children. I started working as a consultant for an early stage company that sold floating solar systems. I worked for a thermal energy storage company that sells ice batteries. I worked for O-Power in behavioral marketing. And I think that over the past 7 years, I've worked for a total of 4 startups. So I think I can say that I have been enjoying the thrill of riding the infamous Cleantech roller coaster. But despite all the ups and downs, it has been a very rewarding professional and personal journey. It has allowed me to work with dedicated people like Percy, and to have long but flexible hours that has allowed me to raise 2 teenage sons as a single parent. And more importantly, I've had the satisfaction to support innovative solutions that help decarbonize our energy system. But to keep accelerating the energy transformation, we need a diverse workforce. Only about 13% of the people who currently work in clean technology startups are women. I hope that today, Percy and I have inspired you to think of the skills that you can contribute to energy startups, and that you will be joining us in the energy startup world.